Really, our mission is bringing family and friends around the table. What is up, guys? We are another episode of At the Table with Ryan Lane, and today we have none other than Matt Mitcham. So, Matt, for those that don't know, is our new president of Lane's Barbecue. Matt's been with us for about going on 4 months.
4 months.
So Matt was with the same company for about 17 years, helped scale it. And as we've just, we can kind of get into more of the phase of business we're in now, but definitely a need, a big need. And I can kind of describe, well, I can share all my weaknesses, but we really just wanted to be able to introduce Matt. And then Matt hear a little bit about just, he already knows our background and a lot of the story, but Matt has a way of pulling information out of my head that I didn't even know was in there, and feelings that I didn't even know that I needed to deal with. And so this is more of a counseling session, maybe.
That sounds good. That works.
Yeah, but
for both of us.
At the end of the day, this podcast is not just a way to interview guests. It's a way to talk small business. It's a way to talk faith, family, and like the why behind what we do. And we thought this would be a great opportunity to kind of bring Matt in and do that. So, Matt, I don't know if you're going to make me cry today or what it is, but like, welcome. Not just welcome, but welcome. We hope that in the past 4 months you felt very loved and welcome by the team. I know that it's been an amazing 4 months on my end. I'm really excited too, as I'm about to kind of embark on a summer vacation with the family. And really for the first time in almost 11 years, I feel like, I don't know if I'm mentally prepared, but I'm going into it with the, like, I'm going to conquer this thing. So
Love it.
welcome.
What a solid intro.
Yeah, well, I've been working on it all night, all morning. It's just,
That's pretty solid.
Yeah.
Well, I am so excited to be on the team. Like you said, it's been about 4 months in. And I think what we were figuring is I'm actually going to interview Ryan, a couple questions, and then you get to fire back from me.
Yeah.
That sound good?
Absolutely. You want to give us a little bit of your background?
Would love to. So again, Matt Mitcham, I'm now, I guess you could say the president, but jack of all trades. But he basically said, was at a software company for about 17 years, helping grow that. And now I'm officially moving over to seasoning. So it's been a pretty exciting journey. We'll tell a bit in my story when we get a little bit further in. But I love to see things grow, and I grow things. That's basically what I do. And I have an opportunity now to help come alongside you, the team, grow the people, and Lane's success that's already happened, just continue to help that magnify where everybody train stays on the tracks.
See, I tend to love chaos, and so structure is not a strong suit of mine. So Matt is our new structure.
I bring consistency.
Yeah.
That's kind of the goal.
Yeah, that's great, man. Well, cool. Well, welcome. Fire away.
Fire away. Well, we were thinking this might be good for the audience too, of just talking. Growing a business is not easy.
Yeah.
By any means. And
I am 45 pounds heavier, and I have a lot more gray hair now.
And it takes a lot of courage.
I might be 55 pounds if you're watching this on YouTube. You know what I mean? Like the camera adds weight, so it's not been good.
Well, take me back a little bit. I mean, we're here, we're selling seasoning, but it's way more than that.
Yeah.
It's hospitality, it's service, it's gathering. Tell me a little about some of the seeds that were planted for you. Where is it? Food, gathering, hospitality? Where'd that come from?
I don't know. I would say it's really, I mean, everything I think comes from how we were raised, right? And so there was a little bit of chaos. I don't know that I saw it as chaos at the time. Mm-hmm. My parents were divorced when I was 5. I still I see both of them all the time now. Yeah. So, but it's still weird. Anyone growing up in a divorce, like a family of divorce, it's just weird. Like, that the way it was didn't work. And I think you always, especially as a 5-year-old, you long for the family to be back together. Does that make sense? Like, even though you know that it's better not, sometimes you still think, I know they're going to get back together. And that's living through a 5-year-old's like mindset, which sometimes I still do. But I think I always longed for like family dinners. I think so much, and I know I've talked about this before, but I think so much happens around the table, whether good or bad. And I'm okay with the bad as well, because I think the bad brings things to light that then we can actually begin to heal. And so I think, there's just a lot of that. In fact, it was crazy. Last week I was down. So my dad lives down in St. Simons. He retired a couple years ago, and him and my stepmom, Libby, they moved down there for full time that they live. And we're about to go down and hang out for a few weeks. And my brother, him and his family have a place there. And so it's just a great time for us all to be together. But the coolest thing happened. And so our place, we'd gotten a place a while ago and it wasn't quite ready. And my dad was like, well, why don't you just have your mom and Gary come down and stay with us? And I'm like my brain like explodes. And I'm like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, man, we've got a whole space upstairs. Like, that would be great. And I'm like, I don't know. It's weird, but I think what it is it's just like, God has such a way of like bringing like healing things. You know what I mean? Like, that's not something I would ever think about. I would hear 15, 20 years ago, but they both are remarried. They're both in, and without that, like, there would be no my brother and I. You know what I mean? So like, so many great things came out of it. And I know that, I don't know if that answered your question, but
You're getting at
ultimately, as a 5-year-old, I think it was very chaotic. And I think the way I see like people gathering around a table is like peace, even whether it's good or bad conversations. I think it's having a conversation. I think so much happens when you don't have a conversation, of you're stuck in your own head, and you start to have both sides of the conversation to yourself, and it's typically negative.
Absolutely.
And so I think just gather around the table, and if the conversation is bad and the food's good, it's all good. And that's kind of, I guess, like full circle where I probably shared way too much on that.
Oh, that was fantastic. Well, when you got in, when did the food piece come into the picture? I mean, were you crushing it in high school?
No. So my mom has always been an unbelievable cook.
Okay.
So she still to this day makes amazing like cookies and cakes and pastries. And if anyone ever had the chicken pot pie when we first started, that's her recipe. The biscuits, like that comes from, well, her mom and dad, but still, like, she taught me how to do it. So my love for food, you can see, has always been there. We should do a podcast of just pictures of Brett and I younger. It's hilarious. But I think my love of food has always been there. And I don't think I ever realized like how much food brings people together. And I think those are some of my fondest memories. And like, as when we were younger, my brother and I, we played baseball all the time. Like, we were always at the field. And so you're eating on the go. And I think my favorite times were like when we sat down and had like spaghetti, or I always remember for the Super Bowl, it was like chili and Doritos and like Cool Ranch Doritos with chili. It's amazing. But just those things, I think most of your memories, like when I think about my memories, they all revolve around food.
Wow. Well, some of the best memories in life that I can think of, food was involved.
Yeah.
Right. Food may not have been the ultimate thing, but it's the ultimate unifier.
Yeah.
It just brings people together. Yeah. That's kind of what we're doing here. Well, when did you decide at some point to turn this and make this into a job and then now a career?
Probably when Brett I'm just kidding. No, I knew like, so even back in college, so there was Will and Mary Alice Amison. And so they were we went to the same high school. I was a couple years ahead of them. But they had a house in Carrollton, and I moved in with them. And they had a grill outside, and Will worked at Whole Foods like back in Roswell on the weekends. And so every now and then he'd come back and he'd bring like things that we just didn't cook, or like lamb chops and steaks and salmon and all this stuff, Brussels sprouts. And
in college, you were having these things?
Like in college. And I remember like my mind was just like blown. I was like, wait, people eat like this all the time? And I remember like that was like one of those things. I remember us sitting down eating, and I was like, this is amazing. Gosh. And you just want to share it. And then, like, we had a big grill at the fraternity house, and we would grill burgers and, hot dogs and all that kind of stuff. And I loved like being able to be around the grill. So many good conversations just happen around a grill.
Did you? So wait, where were just Tostino's pizza rolls? Were those not involved at any of your college?
No,
With
I
ranch
ate those,
dressing?
but those would usually still be frozen. Like, I wouldn't say that anyone in college would be like, man, that kid is going to grow up and he's going to have a business that revolves around food.
Oh,
Like maybe a donut shop, but
yeah.
not like a barbecue space. So, but I would say those two like were heavily influential on like knowing that I needed to do something with food.
Love that. So I know you were working with your brother. I know you've shared that story before, and you guys got the smoker. I remember hearing the story.
Yeah,
of the smoker.
so we closed a 401k account. We got a smoker, and my mom's company was doing like I think it was like a 25-year anniversary party. And so we were going to do a whole hog, and we're like, well, we need a smoker for that. And so that's what we got. That's what we originally got it for.
Did you ever know what that was going to amount to when you got that smoker?
Besides like Happy Bellies, no. I had no like I can't. Here's my problem. Is like the fact is we were talking about a seasoning company. Like that was never in my mind when Lane's started. It was literally a passion for just cooking food and serving food. That was it. I don't tell a lot of people this, but I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I don't eat a ton of barbecue. Like it's not that I love barbecue. Like, me and my buddy Hartsock, we'll go to Texas, we'll eat at all the places. I love that, but it's because of who I'm with.
It's the connection.
It's absolutely the connection. But we don't like. I probably burned my family out. In the early days, they're like, "How about salmon?" Or something that's not what you would traditionally picture as barbecue.
Well, take me back to you're working with your brother at the time, and I know that there's a part of when did you know this was going to be something, and then I think there's also the event of the courage of actually doing it.
Yeah.
And I know there's a little bit of a push there that happened, but when did the seed like I really could do this as a career?
So I remember we had the smoker, and insurance was never my thing. Like I think I lasted a little over 5 years with Brett because of Brett. And I know you. So long story short, like you've known Brett for what 25 years,
25
maybe
years plus.
And so it was never about the insurance for me. It was about and it's always been about relationships with me. Like still to this day, like our clients that we do business with, it's based on the relationship. But what we started doing is we had the smoker, and like he would go in and talk about the insurance, but I would feed them first. And I think there was for me, it was all about the smiles, like, cause they would turn quick cause we were talking insurance. Right. And like, there's never good news. Like if you're coming in and saying, hey, the insurance guy is here, no one smiles.
No.
When they're like the barbecue guy is here,
Big smiles.
it's always smiles. And I think I always want to create those memories for people that like they remember the experience. And I knew, and I think Brett, like he knows me well enough to know like insurance is not the thing. And it's got to be, I really needed like a tangible product. I think with insurance, you just don't have that. And so the courage came from like and this is what I would tell anyone. And I know when James and I talked, it's kind of like, if you are married, like your spouse has to be in your corner, like 110%, because you're already believing the lies that Satan's, pouring in your head. You're not good enough. You're never going to make this. You've got too many bills. You got 2 little kids. Like, how are you going to do this? And so what the good part is I had a supportive brother. I have an amazing family who, have helped us along the way. And I just knew going into it that like, and it's funny, we've kind of talked about this. There is no failing. Like there's learning, but I knew that at the end of the day, I could go back, and I'd already done 5 or 6 different careers before that. Like I knew I could sell, I could go back to do something else if it didn't work. So it's not like 100% in faith. But I knew that it was the time. Yeah. And I started slow, I slowish. It was October of 2013, and I set it up to sell on the side of the road at a produce stand. And like that weekend was amazing. And I remember thinking like, Stace, this is it. And she's like, clicked. Wait, what's it? And I'm like, I don't know, but this is it. And she's like, you're just going to sell barbecue on the side of the road? I was like, maybe. you know? And about 2 months into that, and I was like, no, this is probably not what we want to do. And then there was, the whole tussle with the health department or whatever, but
Small item.
yeah, very, very small. But I think what it was is it allowed me to like, and this is what I would tell anyone like starting a business, like you can like get into the shallow end first before jumping into it doesn't have to be all or nothing. And I typically am a light switch, either I'm on or off. But I think with this, it was a way to kind of test the waters on the side. And I knew like that first weekend, I was like, there has to be a way to make it work. And I think if you're passionate enough about it and like there's risk involved. Like, yeah, you can't be afraid of failing. You got to be all in. And I just knew in January, I remember Brett and I were talking and in truth, I don't do two things well. And so I'm sure he was like, hey, Ryan, you're dropping a lot of balls over here. And so January, I went part-time to kind of help him. And February 1st, like it was on.
Wow.
So it was full on. But I say that like I don't think if Stacy wasn't in my corner and the whole time she was like, you only made this much, like that's not gonna make it. Instead of like it was always encouraging. And even from like I've said this before, like, and I don't want to take away from my parents, but Stacy's mom has been like my prayer warrior this whole time. Like, she got into calligraphy years ago and she would write me just, all these little messages and they'd be in the office and so I'd always see them. And it was just like encouragement. And I was like, you know what? Like, so I guess there's good and bad. Like I was like, man, if I fail at this, I'm going to let a lot of people down, but it wasn't,
You can't lose.
It wasn't like, yes. And so we'll get to that later, but it was like, we couldn't lose. And like, it's not that there's a safety net. The truth is like, it could have crashed and burned and we would have dealt with that if it happened. But I knew that if it did crash, it wasn't going to be Stacy saying, I told you so. And so I always had the freedom to like go out and do it. And even as people, like as we were getting started and people would come and they're working with us, I'm like, look, it's a small business. It's going to be a lot of hours. The pay sucks. And like, it's going to be chaos. And so if you're coming from like a corporate setting, it's going to be very different. And so if your spouse thinks it's going to be 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, like make sure they're okay because there could be weekends, there could be nights, there could be a lot of things that are out of the norm. But I was like, but if you're fulfilled by that, it'll all kind of work itself out.
Man, that was good stuff. That really
it?
was. Yeah, no, it was.
Okay,
It was good.
Good.
Well,
Thought we're gonna have to cut.
Now, as you think through some of this stuff, one of the things I used to always say is like, you'll only rise as far as fear will allow you. Like fear's the limiter for so many people. Relationship, how much money you make, all these things. Like fear is just the thing that stops people in their tracks.
Yeah.
What had been your relationship with fear? Because obviously you broke up with it in some ways and went to a fearless side to say, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
What was that like building up for you?
So I would say my relationship. So is the thing. So Stacy is a middle school math teacher.
Okay.
So there is not a lot of risk. You know what I mean? And like, you have to be a special person with lots of patience to deal with middle schoolers. But what that means is like math is not as risky. Like 1 + 1 is always going to equal 2. You know what I mean? Where my brain just doesn't work like that. So what might cause fear in people, I don't know, man. Maybe it was like I was missing something, but it never really struck me as something I should be afraid of, but it would challenge me to like just dig deep, which also can cause issues.
Yeah.
Starting a business is tough. And so I would say it's not for the faint of heart. There's a reason that a lot of businesses fail every year. And a couple little nuggets here is a lot of them fail because you don't give yourself a long enough runway. Cash is key. Like you got to have some cash to start. And the problem is like, especially with me, let me take a step back. So not much scares me, but I have a hard time saying no because I'm afraid of what people might think. So my fear is probably rooted in something very different. It's not a fear of failure. It's a fear of letting someone down. As if I let them down, it feeds back into the lie that I'm not good enough. You know what I mean? And so, but that also is what motivates me to like go get it. But I have to check myself constantly that I don't go too hard in the paint.
Yeah.
And I leave
It's
my
attention.
family in the wake,
Attention to manage.
you know, because here's the thing, you're starting a business and you might be a solo entrepreneur,
Yeah.
but you're not. Your family is 100% in it with you. You know, that's always people are like, do you own 100% of Lanes? And I'm like, well, yes. However, like Stacy probably owns a lot more. You know what I mean? Like while she's not, you know, involved in the day to day, she's very much involved in the day to day. You know, like she hears about everything. And so it's having that person that you can kind of bounce those things off with. And so it's good if that person's in your corner.
What was that like? I mean, we talked about a lot about the stages of business. You go from like an early struggle, everybody's just hustling, to, you know, getting to the fun part of business and then getting into what we call the Whitewater stage. Yeah. But tell me a little bit, like, what was the early struggle like on your family? What did that feel like for Stacy? You mentioned her being such an ally.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think Stacy kept a lot from me. I think because she knew that I was like focused and I'm a little stubborn too. And so I kind of want things my way. And she knew I just like was just hard charging, going after it. But I always try. I still coach my kids when they were at the age where it was acceptable for me to do. Once it got past my knowledge, I was like, okay, I'm done. But I tried to be at everything. The problem is the kids noticed that I was there, but Stacy noticed that I wasn't. Like I might have been there physically.
You were present, but not present.
And that was my biggest struggle is like, even right now we're having a conversation. I'm thinking about a previous conversation that we had earlier. Yeah. Like I have a hard time like checking out of certain things because I feel like if we didn't quite finish or resolve something, like I have a tough time with it. And so I know there's probably still things that I'm going to uncover years down the road of damage I did to my kids or to Stacy. Not intentional damage, but just where maybe they felt like the business was more important than them.
Yeah.
Even though I would say I worked so hard on that because of them.
Yeah.
And so it's that balance of, I've always struggled with balance from like work and home and play and all those things. And so that's been the biggest kind of learning lesson for me. And the truth is, when we're talking about the different stages of business, I love the beginning. I love chaos. And it probably comes from like the way that I grew up. Not that, I always feel like I'm bashing my family. And the truth is like, I'm not. I'm so thankful for the family that I had growing up, because I think that built all these different lessons like that I kind of followed to this day. But the fact is, coming from a family of divorce is chaotic.
Yeah.
Like you're kind of being shuffled around, and holidays, oh my gosh, what a nightmare. Like you got to go to a bunch of different places. But I think my brain kind of built off of that. And so I love chaos. Like the fun part of starting a business is my favorite part.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, if we could just start, the problem is you start over and like, I don't have 80 hours a week to give anymore.
So when you hear a lot of entrepreneurs, I mean, everybody will tell you like starting a business is not for the faint of heart. It is very, very difficult. You knew all that going into it, but what surprised you in the early years of business? Is there something you just growing a business you just did not see, even though you had counsel around you, wisdom around you?
Yeah, the hardest part for me was the internal relationships. And that's still been the hardest part, because when you have someone who strives off of chaos or honestly enjoys it, you know what I mean? Well, most of the people that you're bringing on don't feel the same way. Which is why they decided not to start a business, and they're coming, they want to be help and bring that in, but they didn't come from that. And so that's the hardest part, is when you're bringing someone on and just the communication piece
Yeah.
and the understanding. So a lot of times I just fly by the seat of my pants, and we're pivoting here and pivoting there, and it throws people off. And so the unfortunate part about business over the last 10 or 11 years is a lot of relationships that I would do a lot of things different. But when we started the business, like most everyone that worked with us was like within our network,
Yeah.
or friends of mine, or family, or, and that's the hardest part, because Ryan outside of business is a different person from Ryan inside of business. Like, I would love and say in a perfect world, I'm exactly the same. But the truth is I'm not. And I don't want to apologize for that. Like, outside of business, I'm not thinking about payroll for 30 something people. Like, it's not on my mind. The problem is I'm not outside of business that much.
Yeah.
And so it's the balancing of relationships and work, and like showing compassion, humility, like kindness, patience. Like, it's how do you live out the things that we read in the scripture, and like how do we bring it all together in like a personal thing where when the day is over, like you can still be friends, or that's just the hardest part of it is as a business changes, the needs of the business change, and starting a business, and in the fun part, everything's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun, right? And it's so much fun because you're winning all the time. And then we get to where we are now.
Yeah.
Which is in the Whitewater stage, which is why you're here.
Why I'm here. How long did you run in? How long? I know you said early struggle, fun, where there was a lot of overlap there. How long do you feel like that ran? And when did you feel like you started to see, I don't want to say some chinks in the armor, but some of the stuff start stirring?
I would say after a couple years. So really it was just catering for about a year and a half. And it was just me. And those are really like some of the funnest days where I learned a lot about like what I had deep down, like finding that extra when you're completely exhausted, and it's going from you're doing all the shopping, whether it be at Restaurant Depot, to then cooking everything,
Yeah.
to then serving everything, to then invoicing and collecting. Oh yeah, and I'm still a
Clean up
husband
and
and a
doing what-
father. Yeah, and a lot of this I was doing out of like our family's kitchen,
I'm
which
sure Stacy loved
that's
that.
probably going to be years of counseling, to try to like to kind of dig through and heal all that there. I know that like I destroyed our house, like, so I don't know.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, when did the thing start to get, at a point as you're growing, you're adding staff, things are happening, revenue, sales are coming. When did it start to kind of feel like it was unraveling a little bit for you? Like this is getting to be a little too much to my
I think,
capabilities.
it took a couple years to get to the $1 million mark. I think that was like kind of a tipping point. I realized that, once we got past that, it was requiring some more people, some more hands, some better systems. And I'm not a systems guy. Like I'm just not, I'm not organized like that. And so I could keep a lot of stuff in my head from 1 to probably 3 or 4. I kind of started to feel it, but I was like, all right, you still got control of this. But I could feel like there was conversations that I should have had with like members of the team, and I didn't, because I'm like, they'll work themselves out, or they probably see it the way I see it, and it's not that big of a deal. But I think once it got past that, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's when I knew that we needed help, but I just didn't know how to get there, if that makes sense. It would kind of always been like, I just made all the decisions, and now it's like, I don't know how to make them or what to do next. It's like, there's a problem, but you don't know the first step to take, which is usually admitting there's a problem.
Yeah.
But you don't slow down enough to do that. And so you usually create more issues. But I would say it was probably like 5 to 6 years in. And I knew that like this thing is like, it's building momentum and it's really starting to roll. And we need help.
And then COVID was a huge inflection point. I mean, now everybody's at home. Everybody's sitting in front of a grill.
Yeah, COVID was very different than we thought it was. So I know it was the first day, I forget whatever day in March, I think it was. I remember our kids were supposed to go to a camp at church, and we all went there. And they're like, "Hey guys, we're gonna have to pause this." And then they said, "But give us a little bit of time." So we're all sitting in the sanctuary, and then all of a sudden, Jason gets up there and he's like, "All right, listen, guys, there's this thing called COVID. We're not really sure what this is, but the camp just closed."
Yeah.
I remember we went home and I was like, "I don't even know what he's talking about, but I'm sure we'll be back up and running tomorrow, you know?" And the next day I listened to some stuff and I was like, "Oh, well, this sounds like it could be kind of serious." And I was like, "I wonder how this is going to affect the overall business." And at this point in time, we had a business and we had, I don't know, maybe 10 or 11 people on the team, and we were rocking. And I remember I was like, "Oh my gosh," but we had payroll every other week and we had bills and receivables. And I remember going home and Stacy's like, "What are we going to do?" She wasn't asking what are we going to do? She's scared. She's just literally what are we going to do? Are we going to have to let people go? And I remember we prayed and I was like, "I don't think so." I think we had been able to put some away, and I was like, if we need to support this thing for a little bit while the world kind of figures out what's going on, we will. And she's like, "I support you." She's like, and no one knew, no one knew what was going on. And I remember I went in the next day and I was like, "Hey guys, let's all gather around real quick." And I was like, "Listen, I know people might be scared of what's going on. I don't have any answers, but I can tell you it's going to be business as usual around here. If you're uncomfortable and you don't want to be here, that's okay. If you do want to be here, there's a spot for you. We're going to make this work. We'll figure out a way if we have to," because catering pretty much shut down overnight. There was everyone canceled events. So there was nothing. And it was probably a couple weeks in, and then things just started changing. Everyone was stuck at home. It was weird because I know Jeremy had just started in February. God's timing is, I know someone might say God's timing is not great, but for us, it kind of worked out. But Jeremy had come on and he'd rebuilt the website and put all these things in place, and all of a sudden the world was online. They weren't in person and they were online, and it just kind of worked out. But I remember Stacy and I talking, and I was like, no matter what, I think we're in a place where we can figure it out, even if we have to completely. And that's the beauty about being a small business is, if you're a big organization, it's harder, but we could pivot.
You can pivot.
And no one was telling me I can't. Well, except the news and the world and all that. But we're let's figure this out. And you've already met the team, so the team is all about it. They're
It's the dream
all
team.
right, let's do it. And I remember I don't think anyone came up and said, I don't feel safe with this, or just tell me what we need to do.
Yeah.
And so that was probably the scariest part about COVID is just the not knowing. And then we were drinking from a fire hose. Yeah. It went from nothing to we were running, and we ran for, COVID really lasted a couple of years. I know it's still, around, but with what we're dealing with for maybe a couple of years.
Yeah.
And that was really probably the most challenging part of all of business.
Yeah.
For me, that was when I think I most felt in Whitewater, because all of a sudden the situation seemed out of my control, and there was nothing I could do to fix it. And it was just, we were just running. It was total chaos. And it was harder to get supplies. It was harder to get bottles, but the opportunities were even greater. That's really when, co-packing kind of took off and went. So
that's good. Well, we were, even before at coffee, we were talking about this, that people are most comfortable in certainty.
Yeah.
But they're most alive in the absence of it.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of certainty versus mystery. It's that dance right there. And I feel like what you've talked about is you've been able to kind of do both of those well, because you have a staff that usually needs certainty, yet a lot of entrepreneurs thrive on the mystery and what's not known and what is going to happen.
Yeah.
And so when you got into the Whitewater, and just so everybody knows, we're referring to a book called Predictable Success by, was it Les McEwen? Is that right? So I don't know if when you read that book, I've never had anything feel like it was reading my mail. Like there were cameras around tracking me every day when I read this book. So highly recommend reading. Maybe we put it in the show notes if anybody hadn't read it. But do you remember the first time you read it? What did it feel like?
Actually, one of our pastors, Matt Mitcham, gave it to me a couple years ago. And he was like, hey, what you're talking about sounds like this. And what I would say most for the Whitewater phase that really got me is it is the feeling, which I love chaos, but it was the feeling of out of control. It was like quicksand. Like I couldn't get out of it. I kept getting pulled down. And I would say it almost took me out. Like last November, before you came on, I know our whole team was struggling. And when I say struggling, if you're an outsider looking in, we had it made.
Yeah.
Business was booming. Our social media was killing it. Our advertising was going great. It was brine season. We were drowning. And I think that's why I call it Whitewater. It's all those things that you used to do so well that you can't seem to do anymore just because your system is broken.
Correct.
And I think that was I think the time. And when I say I felt like I was burned out, I felt like I was letting them down. Even though I didn't know it was going to happen, but I didn't have the tools to fix it. And so I was just like you're just flailing, and I think that's what happens is that's the point where quicksand kind of overtakes passion. And then you just go into this deep dive. I think I've been feeling this for a while. So last June, I started walking a lot. And it hasn't done much, but I do it for the mental piece, for my mental clarity, it's been so great for me. And now Stacy and I will walk. But it's just a kind of a great time to break down the day. And she's like, she can always tell when I'm wrestling with something. And so it's just a great time away from the distractions of work and phones and all those things to just kind of break it down. And then I get to her perspective, which I don't always agree with. That's the way God designed us. We think totally different. And I'm so thankful for that, because while I don't agree with it, after a few hours, I'm like, daggum it, she's right. If I would just listen, my problem is I like to battle a little, you just kind of bring it up.
We love you, Stacy.
Yeah, 100%. We wouldn't be sitting here having this literally with you here. We wouldn't be sitting here because I wouldn't have. I don't know that I would have drowned, but I remember sitting down with the guys and I was like, guys, I promise this won't ever happen again, because either we won't be here for it to happen again, or we're going to bring in someone who's going to help us change it. And that was really what was needed.
And we talk a lot about how growth creates complexity, and then complexity kills growth.
Yeah.
And that's one of the big things when you're in this early struggle, then it gets fun, and then it starts to, everything's a high five, we're winning big deals.
Yeah.
And then it gets more and more complex. And then now we have 100 orders. Now we have 1,000 orders. Now how do we fulfill this? And that complexity is really where I've seen a lot of businesses, and you get encouraged to you. A lot of times, a lot of people decide to go back to fun. Just scale back, make it easy, make it a lifestyle business. What made you decide to kind of push through and move to the next level, which obviously you brought me on. So
Jeremy, Jason, Karen, Thor, April, Sandy, Matt, they did.
Yeah.
Meaning it's not fun because it's not just me anymore. Pete, Chuck, all of them, you know what I mean? There's a family there now. And so selfishly, let's go back to fun. But how can we be in fun and push through that Whitewater as well? You know what I mean? So and that's really the key is how do we get, which is once we get past the Whitewater, me out of the weeds where I can get back to doing what I need to be doing to help the business. me being in the weeds doesn't help the business.
Yeah.
It hurts it. And so ultimately, like, it's about the people. Like, you can, but me sitting around a table sharing a meal doesn't do it for me. Like, I want the rest of the team there, to do it. And I feel like I feel bad because I didn't mention everyone, but you know what I mean? Like, so just know we don't
You're
have
good.
enough time, and my memory's not as good as it used to be.
What would you say? What do you think's at stake if we don't grow? Why does the world need more
You know what's
lemons?
funny is, like, you always hear if you're not growing, you're dying. I think it's really just the lies that we believe. And the truth is, like, we talked, and the goal is growth. I mean, I think there's other people that, like, are ready to be on the team, whether they know it or not. You know what I mean? And so, like, they're the people we haven't met yet. They're the lives that haven't been changed yet. I mean, that's really kind of what I see is, like, who's not here yet. And I just think that you can grow, but even if we didn't grow, we could better our systems. And I mean, we could run a more profitable business. We could have less stress. I want it to be a place where people want to be. But at the end of the day, like, I want them to be able to go home and, like, be with their families.
So if we were to, as we're kind of wrapping up, you're in business and this, so what, if you're sitting in front of a bunch of new entrepreneurs or they desire to be,
Yeah.
what would be the nugget that you would pass them that you've learned over these last 10, 11 years?
One is, like, when it gets hard, dig deeper, because it's not like if it's like it's happening. Like, it's going to get hard. It's going to get tough. Two, like, you got to have people in your corner.
Heard that theme.
Like, you have to. We wouldn't be sitting here if it weren't for all those people praying for us, for Stacy, for my family, for her family. Like, plus, like, you need the support system. They always say it's lonely at the top. The truth is, it's really not. 10 times, like, it's lonely when you're stuck in your head. And that's usually where we try to live, because we don't want to burden everybody else. But we are burdening them because we're keeping it all in. People want to help, but a lot of times we don't let them in. And so I would say, like, be open, be honest, be vulnerable with your team and, like, with your family, and let them know, like, hey, I'm struggling with this and I don't know how to fix it. And that's what a lot of times, like, I'm so prideful, I put my name on the business, right? So pride is definitely something that I deal with a lot. And so for me, failing, I've always looked at it, it kind of says that I'm not good enough. But I failed a lot. And I would say, like, just understand, if you start something, you're going to fail. But, like, failing isn't failing, it's learning. And if you're not failing, you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
Like, I think you're not. You're taking the easy road, and you're
staying in
probably
comfort.
not growing.
Well, for all those that know Ryan, and I've getting experience, especially over the last 4 months, but we've known each other for a long time.
Yeah,
but
20 years. But, like, we've talked more in the past 4 months than we have.
yeah. And I will
time.
say, I have yet to really meet a leader that leads with as much positivity and vulnerability as you do. And it's why he's so magnetic.
And I haven't cried yet. I always feel like I need to. Here, I also would be remiss if I don't say, like, so there have been a lot of people that aren't with us right now. And it sucks, right? And this is everyone from, like, my buddy Brian to Derek. It's been so many people that have come like, in the path that aren't here. And while they're not here, I think the truth is, like, everyone's not meant to be here forever. Yes. Like, when I say here, I mean in the business, not here. Like, but I'm so thankful, like, for the time that we had. You know what I mean? Like, I learned so much from all the people that have been with us. That doesn't mean that we agree with every single thing, but I think that everyone's coming here with the heart of, like, wanting to give everything they have. And, like, that, I think, is that's why I don't want to go back to fun.
Yeah.
Because I think you miss that. Doesn't mean every relationship is going to end the way you want it to.
Yeah.
But it can still be healthy. You know what I mean?
So what would you, just to kind of close, what would you say you're most excited about? We got a lot of change happening right now at Lanes.
Yeah.
What are you most excited about in the future?
Well, I don't know when this episode will air, but I'm most excited about the next like 2.5 weeks. So in the past 10 and a half, 11 years, I've never really fully disconnected. And so, Riley's about to go off to college. Ansley just started driving. And it's just one of those things, like, I know we don't have much time like with them at the house left. And it's been like, when we started talking 4 months ago, I was like, I'm not telling you I'm burned out. I'm telling you, like, I need to rediscover my why at home. You know what I mean? Like, I need to, when I say fall in love with hang out with my family again, like, fall in love with hang out with my family that's not related to Lane's barbecue.
Yeah.
Everything kind of always rolls back into Lane's and the business and all that. And so I'm looking forward to walks with them, and just eating and laughing and just spending time with family. And I don't think that could happen without the team that we have. And so I'm pumped.
I love
Like,
that.
and that's not really business related, but it's 100% business related. I think if I can't check out and work on myself, which is what I would also tell someone, is like, build that in. Like, working on yourself. I think as an entrepreneur, you feel like you got to give it 110% all the time.
Yeah.
And you're just not, maybe people are wired different. I know I'm not wired to where I can constantly do that. And I'm excited to see where it goes.